Hi guys, and welcome back. So today is going to be a little challenge video, and I was really excited to do this one because it sounds a lot of fun, but it's the 10-minute drawing challenge. So that's really kind of straightforward. You have 10 minutes to draw what you can, and I have the stopwatch next to me so you guys can watch as the time is ticking away. And when I started this challenge, I thought it was going to be a lot simpler and easier than it actually was. I kind of expected that there would be a few steps that I would just have to cut out, but I think that I overestimated how quickly I thought I could draw. And I guess when I'm like drawing at a normal pace, I'm not thinking about the time and I'm not checking that. So it may feel quick to me because I'm enjoying it and it's kind of working, but when I'm actually timing myself, it definitely takes a lot longer than it feels like it does. And I mean, I know that I didn't anticipate getting a full complete picture in 10 minutes thinking that I was capable of doing that. So it was just kind of an eye-opener of an appreciation for, I guess, the amount of time that even simple stuff that I do, that still takes time and effort. So when I started this, I definitely wanted it to be a full, complete looking image, so not just like a sketch. So for this, I really did want it to be something that I filled in the whole page and had design elements that had a composition to it overall in the dimensions that I was working in. So I think that in some ways that made it a little bit harder, and in other ways it made it a little bit easier. So since it was a format like that and I knew that I just had to fill it up, I went in with this gold ink that I have, and since I could fill in the background, it really didn't take that much time, but it had a pretty significant impact as far as making this piece look complete. And I was able to leave just like the empty space of like a circle around her head, which was a pretty significant design element, which was very easy and quick to implement since it was simply drawing around where I wanted it to be and then filling everything around it with ink. So it was design elements like that that I was able to produce fairly quickly but still have an impact that I wanted and a design style that I would typically do in a piece that I give myself more time. So I liked that. I liked that I was able to put more of my own style into something, even though it was pretty quick, and I did have to go past some of the things that I normally would put in to make it more of my own. And I actually really loved working on this. It was really fun to just kind of dive in and have to make design choices and make it happen and then see how it looks in the end. But I do feel like I learned a lot as far as what medias I should be using for future 10-minute challenges, because I actually really had a lot of fun, so I think I'll definitely do a new one. But right now, where I'm coloring in her hair a solid black, I figured that would be a pretty quick and significant way to fill in that space, and I do really like solid black elements in my pieces. But I chose to use a black Copic marker, and the marker did not spread ink fast enough for how fast I wanted to move and could have moved. So I think if I do something similar to that, a solid black area, I should definitely use bottled ink next time, because I'm able to spread that really fast with a brush. I can put it down and it's done in a couple seconds, whereas this I felt extremely limited on how fast I could go, and it was really frustrating. And in the end it was still kind of transparent. It wasn't opaque black. So if I had gone in with the right kind of media from the beginning, I think that it would have been faster and more opaque. Before I started this challenge, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted the design to look like, and I chose the Copic marker because I thought it would be faster than the ink, but now that I've actually timed myself and executed it, it's definitely clear that the ink itself would have been the better option. So when I was planning out what medias I actually wanted to use in this piece, I wanted to be as strategic as possible with what order I use them in. So I knew that I wanted to use Copic markers, a brush pen, and the gold ink for the background. So I wanted to make sure that I could use them in an order that, since I have no time to let anything dry, that I could move on to the next step as quickly as possible. So for this, I started with the Copic markers first, since if the inking doesn't have time to dry, it will bleed into the Copic markers, even if it's Copic proof. So I went in with the Copics first, and I gave her black hair first, and then I shaded. And that one was a little bit of a gamble because I put her facial features somewhere slightly different with the pencil work, but I knew that they were shifted a little bit wrong. Her face the proportions were just not quite the placement that I wanted. So when I went in with the with the shadows, it was a little bit of kind of a leap of faith, hoping that when I got to the inking that they would kind of match up and that I would be able to make her face look the way that I wanted it to, where even though they weren't lining up. And I think that for the most part, it definitely helped. I think that the inking or the penciling was not quite right, and then I add the shadow in the general area that I knew that I wanted her nose, and then when I went more precisely in with the inking brush, I was able to get it a lot closer to what I wanted. So it was definitely an interesting experience to not be able to go back and make sure that everything was really exactly placed where I wanted it to, where I kind of had to take that leap of faith and then hope that I would be able to get it placed correctly in the subsequent steps after that, because normally I get it perfectly sketched out or perfectly where I want it to be, and then I can go in and I know exactly where it is. Or this, it was kind of up in the air and I wasn't quite sure. And also her face, because I couldn't really spend more time sketching it out, it ended up being really, really long. And since I had her hair cutting over the sides of her face, it really elongated her face even more. Since it was cutting it off, it made it even more narrow and it appeared a lot longer. So that's just kind of things to keep in mind, is maybe next time when I try this, try to be a little bit more, or give a little second to try to get the proportions correct for where I want it to be, because this one was a little bit long and a little bit stretched out. One thing that I absolutely did out of order, and I wish I could go back and do it a little bit differently, is I should have done the inking as the second step. So I should have done Copic inking, then the gold ink behind it, because I actually did that out of order. I did all of the colors first and then went to the inking very last, but since it's a very wet gold ink, it stayed wet. So I wasn't able to put my hand where I needed to be able to get in and get the really precise line work that I wanted. But I still had to move on. I couldn't wait for it to dry, so I had to kind of crane my hand and try to get it in there. So I ended up going for, well, that's one of the reasons, but also clearly the time issue. But I did end up going for a much looser, sketchier inking quality. I mean, there's no way I would have had time to make it really precise anyways. But I enjoyed that. I liked that it was forcing me to work as loosely as possible and to be strategic about where I was putting the line work and what gave the biggest impact. And I do wish, if I did have time for the ink to dry, the gold ink behind it, I would have liked to have put some stray hair strands coming off of her head that would overlap the gold. I think that would have been something that I normally would have done design-wise in pieces that I had more time. So it feels kind of strange to not be able to put that in, like I'm leaving something off, which I really am. But there's just a few elements like that where it feels like I should be able to put that on, and like I need to put that on for it to feel more complete for me. But since I can't, it feels a little bit of a struggle, because that, I guess that's the thing about this challenge, is that you have to find out how far you can get in 10 minutes and what elements are just not possible to put in. So yeah, I mean, I don't think if I had waited to put the ink in after I had brushed it, done the brush work, I still don't think I would have been able to do that, because I would have had to go in very precisely on the empty space inside of the locks of hair that I put. So ultimately, I don't think there was really a good way around it to be able to include those stray hairs. It kind of feels like it should be there. While I was working on her, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to resolve her eyeballs. I actually really love leaving the eyeballs blank a lot of the times. I guess because it's kind of like, because they're like seen as the window to the soul, and you can read emotions and you can read a lot about people through their eyes. I kind of like leaving that empty and leaving it blank. It just has this really mysterious impact to it, and I love the look of it. So I absolutely love doing that. But because it was a 10-minute challenge, I wanted to try to address it in the time that I had, rather than leaving it blank and it being almost like one of the things that had to be left out. I wanted to try to address it so that it was something that I was actively choosing to give her and put in the piece. So this one, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to go in with the gold ink or if I wanted to give her just black pupils. Ultimately, I went in at the very last minute with a very green Copic marker, and I chose green because it was a little bit of an in-between between her clothing colors and the gold behind it, where her clothing was a little bit bluer and that was yellow. I felt that the green kind of fit with the overall color scheme of this piece, but it was different and unique enough that it would make her eyes stand out. So I went in with the chisel tip actually, and I just gave really thin, narrow little irises, and then I went in with the brush nib and I added a little bit of a pupil and just a little bit more definition to it. And ultimately I'm actually really happy with how the pupils ended up looking. They're really kind of very, very loose, but I like the overall shape and the impact they have, and they still have this kind of ghostly, gaunt kind of quality to it that was a little bit similar to just leaving them blank. So ultimately I feel like that was a really happy medium for me, where I could get it in between this kind of the look that I wanted, but still having something there that also showed it. And that is actually pretty much it for this piece. This part I'm just peeling the tape off the edges, and the timer has gone off and I'm done with this piece. It was really fun actually to work on the 10-minute challenge. I think that it definitely gave me an appreciation for how long it takes me normally to do my pieces, because I find that sometimes I feel a certain amount of like stress when I'm taking longer to do a piece than I feel like I should. So it's a good reminder that good art takes time and it takes concentration, and yeah, I can not feel guilty about putting that into my pieces. So it was really actually very fun, and I like that I had to really think on my feet and get those design elements in there. So I definitely will be doing another 10-minute challenge, probably not too long from now, because I really loved it. So thank you so much for watching, and I do have a shop that has prints and originals available and buttons too right below me, so if you want to check out that link. And I will also have this original available on the shop for $10, so $1 per minute. So since it was so quick, I'll make it a very cheap little affordable piece of original art. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. See you at my next one. Bye.